3, 2, 1. Welcome in to the first Song of Hope podcast. I'm so thrilled to be here with my buddy Russell Willoughby. We want to start Believe It. How you doing today, bud?
Man, it is awesome to be here. Of all of the esteemed guests that I know you will have on this podcast, it's an honor, man, for me to be the first one. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, bro. Well, like I explained to you, I'm going to do a lot of entertainers. I want to do stuff like that. But I wanted to get some people that kind of have voices in our community that are associated with the arts, maybe not necessarily have a show on 76, you know. But you do have a show in town.
We do.
So we're going to get into talking about that a little bit. But I have got, as I explained to you right before we started, I have got my little kind of James Lipton style inside the actor's studio
my favorite here. Curse word.
Yes. Exactly. And we talked to on the upside, said are we G or PG? And so we'll see how that goes.
Darn. That was my favorite.
Exactly. So... man, I've got a specific question, and I want you to put like a tiny mini bio into it, like, you know, that you grew up here, stuff like that.
Okay.
But the question is, what is your history with the arts?
History with the arts. Well, so we are here on Rose O'Neill.
Yes.
I grew up 3 blocks down, basically, right down Todd, dead end street in the same neighborhood. So I can remember riding my bike up and seeing the horses over at Dolly's Stampede for historical references. It might have been called something else. Seeing all of the local shows, when Country Tonight, What Do You Say? And all of the entertainers in town, whenever it was really the main focus as well. The 90s boom, obviously, was born here 1990, and have seen a lot of the changes that has happened, but my interest in entertainment as well started early. I was a drummer from a very young age, had a Mickey Mouse drum set that I started on when I was 8. My birthday present, as long as I practiced enough on my little practice pad beforehand, was a drum set.
Oh, nice.
And I was playing at the house down on Todd one time, and another local performer heard me playing, and she had a Patsy Cline tribute show in town.
Okay.
So whenever I was 12 years old, I started drumming for the Patsy to Present show.
Okay.
And from there, just got involved in many different, I was always kind of a fan of technical stuff, with my dad being in radio. I was behind the scenes on a lot of audio, stuff like we're doing now. I love audio, love messing with it in any way possible. Editing, recording, DJing, whatever I can do audio-wise, huge fan. So that got me really interested in the technical side of the shows. So started doing spot op. I was spot op for Starlight Theater, for actually Americana, whenever Country Tonight came over there as well. Pierce Arrow Show, stage manager, Justin Flom, like I said, Patsy to Present. So just different technical things, and have seen a lot of the shows in town.
Awesome, man. Okay, so I want to key on a couple of things you said there. Number one, I have a long history of asking for drum sets for Christmas too.
Nice, yes.
And there different times it panned out better than others. I remember I was like 7 and I got like electronic one. I was kind of bummed out, and that wasn't really what I wanted.
Not what you were looking for.
When I was a kid, like probably 3, 4, 5 years old, I had one. And then, being a kid, I would leave it out. I think my dad stepped through my snare drum one time. So I got one upstairs right now. But so I have my own experience with that too. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
And then actually, while I was at Patsy, that's where I got the drum set that I have now. There was a I can't remember the show that came in at the time. It's now the God and Country Theater is where they were at the time. We'd moved around a couple places, Branson Mall and other locations, and I heard this drum set next door, and it was a funk tribute show of some kind, and it was the funkiest kick. Oh man. And I came in and I listened to a couple songs, and afterwards the drummer was packing it up, and I was like, man, I love the sound of that kid. He's like, it's actually for sale. I'm packing it up to switch over to a new one. I got a 1983 Tama Art Star, just a classic old kid, got multiple plies, so he's got some maple and some birch in it. I love the tones in it. Always been a huge drum fan.
Heck yeah, man. So who's your favorite drummer? Do you have one?
Growing up in the era, Travis Barker.
Yeah.
He had the attitude, he had the skills, he had the chops. Do you know local, well, now he's, all over, but Dathan DeVore, that used to be here in town. He was in the band in high school for the Branson band. He was kind of the first drummer that I saw that I was like, oh, you can do that.
Right.
And he got me into a lot of other drummers. But yeah, for me, even though he was like the punk rock attitude, showing up naked, there's something about Travis Barker. He's got the skills.
I love it, man. We had a drummer for my grandpa. He actually passed away, but his name was Chuck Landry. country, and he was amazing.
Man, yes.
You know, so crisp. So we have some really awesome drummers in this town. You know, I was raised on classic rock, so obviously like Neil Peart, that kind of
for
stuff.
sure.
Phil Collins,
And I
you
have
know,
mad respect.
Yeah.
Mad respect.
Absolutely. And then, but as I got a little bit older, do you know the band and Levon Helm?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
so
man.
that's somebody who I think I've gravitated for, you know, towards as far as
There's one guy, he's not necessarily famous outside of the drum world, but he's Zorro the drummer, and he's a funk drummer, and he actually created his own bass pedal that is cube shaped in order to get more thump out of it.
Interesting.
And he would do all of these funk drum remixes over some classic funk songs. So you'd have James Brown songs, all kinds of classics, and he would just do his drums over it. Oh, I miss those. I wish I could find that CD.
That's pretty rad, dude. All right, so we glossed over something real quick because there's a famous set of names in this town, and that is Steve and Janet. And I want you to explain to me who they are.
So they had a morning show on 106.3 KRZK, ironically, from 6 to 9. I'm kind of familiar with that time slot now.
Yeah.
Very long running, 25, 24, 23, somewhere years of on air in this town. A lot of people grew up with them, obviously including myself, and that was kind of my intro into radio. My dad always had a passion for radio.
And Steve is your dad.
Yes, Steve Willoughby. Janet is not my mom, despite what many of my classmates thought as I was growing up.
She's everybody's mom.
She is. She is sweet. We call her my crazy Aunt Janet, and I love her to death. Another person who was very instrumental in my upbringing also, of course, my mom, Dorinda. Got to give a shout out to that saintly woman, one of the most patient people in the world. Trust us, me and my dad will tell you. But yeah, they had. My dad was always into broadcasting and went to school for media. He's got a funny story. When he was first learning to be on the microphone, I guess there was an exercise that they were talking about in one of his classes to put ping pong balls in his mouth to be able to enunciate things better. So he would do things and like give speeches and talks practicing with ping pong balls in his mouth. That's how dedicated he was. But it was always into, he could tell you all the radio stations all across the country and who's on what and give you all the details. But yeah, had that long time morning show that got me exposed to a lot of the great shows that we get to see.
Yeah. Did you ever see the Kirby Van Burch Christmas show?
Oh yeah.
And Philip Welford, his comedian he had. And so you reminded me of that because he would do this juggling bit and he would catch the balls in his mouth and then he would say, drum roll, preach. You know, so
exactly.
We always do that. And
like you gotta work it in.
Yeah. When I hosted the talent show stuff in high school, you know, and half of the jokes I did were just from my dad sitting in the audience, basically, you know. So I'd say, like, drum roll, preach. You hear one person laughing, you know. So
you gotta know your crowd.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So we're out because you mentioned the radio, because you mentioned the time slot you're in. Let's talk a little bit about the upside.
Yes, absolutely. So Josh Clark and myself, we were approached kind of late third quarter last year, 2020, if you were around, if anybody remembers that blur of a year. We got approached for a new morning show slot that was available, and they virtually said, we know that you're not traditional. You're not going to be a regular quote-unquote radio show. Even though I have experience in the radio industry, obviously, it's not necessarily me to be by the rules as much.
Yeah.
So what they said is, you know, what do you guys want to do? What's the format? And Josh and I came together and we started discussing things. The name The Upside came up. Mostly it was at the time, you know, where election tensions were very high and people were yelling at each other and there were more and more sides to be divided into. And we decided for us, let's just go a complete opposite route. How can we give good news, if there's any news? So every morning we do good news segments 2 or 3 times a morning, whether it's local or national, just something positive to discuss. We keep our discussions positive. We say it's a show about nothing because if we like to debate and argue, but it's about topics that don't matter. It's your favorite peanut butters and what Reese's combination's better than others.
Marvel or DC.
Exactly. We just get into things that are more fun. We love our interaction. We told everybody at the beginning we wanted to foster a community of positivity, and that's really become what has happened. It's awesome. We do Facebook streaming live as well as 106.3, obviously, KRZK.com, and our Facebook or TuneIn Radio app. our Facebookers, they get together. It's so funny. They'll have their own conversations completely aside from what we're discussing or talking about.
Right.
But they're their own community. They chat with each other every morning. Just kind of a fun way to get together, start the morning off right.
Yeah, I like that. And then, now Greg Pyron and Scott McCauley have their thing too. So that kind of is the more traditional.
Yes, the
and then,
professionals.
Yeah.
You got Ozarks Now. That's with the professor, Greg Pyron, and
Yes.
two-time Hall of Famer, Scott McCauley. And they do get into a lot of the real topics and real hard-hitting discussions that people need to know about. But they have a lot of fun doing it as well. And those are the professional, longtime radio hosts.
As you mentioned, Branson pirate legend Scott McCauley,
Yes.
and Josh has been involved, for a long time in this community.
Yeah.
I've known Josh for a long time, and he actually was on my sports show and
Yes.
stuff, which we had fun time doing. And now Josh is one of the voices of the Pirates that does it with Scott, and
The color commentator, and he certainly adds that
he's
to
colorful
it.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. He gets mad at the refs. He's
Poor
kinda
Scott. He's
yeah.
he has a lot on his plate, just phoning the emails and phone calls.
Yeah, but now one of us, a Pirates fan, a rowdy, is in the booth with them. You know what I mean? So yeah,
I love it.
So that's awesome, bro. Tell me a little bit about because even your dad had told me about this years ago. That you got into doing some music yourself. Tell me a little bit about that.
Opportune time to take a drink of water there.
Yeah, that's good.
So I was a rapper.
Yes.
With my history in drums, I was really into like anything rhythmic, and I was into the beat more as far as DJing, beat matching. I do key matching and that kind of stuff too, but rhythm, beats, flows, that was kind of my introduction into like music that I found myself personally passionate for.
Yeah.
A lot of it started with DJing because the old hip hop scene is where turntablism and that kind of DJ style came to be. So, all the old school DJs way back to like Grandmaster Flash and even whenever going into rappers like Rakim. There's different styles that you got to watch for me growing up, and then I caught up because I was probably sixth grade. So however old you'd be in sixth grade, I remember specifically being extra into it. Probably fifth grade or so is whenever I got Country Grammar, the Nelly album. Yes. Got really into Outkast. Okay. So like Stankonia, different albums that I had on deck. And that got me into, in the time of, I'm pretty sure statute of limitations is passed now, in the time of Kazaa and streaming and LimeWire and all the computer virus torrent downloads that you could do. I just started catching up from, the late 80s, even the 90s, got really into the Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac and Snoop Dogg and all the East Coast, all the West Coast, anybody that I could get my hands on. Got into NWA, got into, a lot of the classic progressions of hip-hop that you see. Yeah. And then as I was growing up, you had 50 Cent that was big, Eminem, like different rappers that were taking the main stage. So yeah, I got interested in that, started making some songs, ended up, ironically enough, in Branson, Missouri was where I got introduced to what used to be the former manager of Basement Beats. Okay. So Country Grammar, the main producer on that entire album is Jason Epperson. Jason Coco Bridges is another producer that has many number ones and Grammy Award winner for Shake Your Tail Feathers with Nelly and Murphy and P. Diddy, obviously.
It's Missouri music.
Yes.
That's right.
And, they did all kinds. He also did Over and Over Again, the big crossover with Tim McGraw that let a lot of people that were outside of the hip hop community kind of go, wait, what is this guy? And vice versa with the rap community as well. Like, oh, Tim McGraw, interesting. I wonder what else he has. So being able to be in the same room and even in some of the same studios that some of these guys recorded, Chingy, H as they call him, his real name's Howard. So Huey, who did Pop Lock and Drop It, I was very fortunate. I got to be in the studio with him a couple times, just hang out with him at barbecues. He's since passed away, got shot in St. Louis, rest in peace. But yeah, being able to just be around people who have made their living in music, seeing that possibility and seeing what that was, the creative side, but the work that went into it was really fascinating for me.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I'm glad you got into that. My cousin Tanner, he's actually trying to get into kind of rap and hip hop, making music like that, And Absolutely. It's funny because he's 4 years younger than me, so awesome. We have a different kind of generation that we grew up on, right? He's Kanye and Chance the Rapper, and then I grew up basically Eminem and classic stuff, and so but he always makes me say it over and over again. He's like, what's that thing you say about Eminem? And I'm like, oh, he represents the angst of all middle-class white kids of a certain generation.
Yeah.
He just laughs, it's true,
That was definitely how they marketed him.
Yeah, just that, that's funny. So, okay, I want to key on something because you talked about kind of the different decades in rap and hip hop. Mm-hmm. But what I like to do, in part of everything that I do with my sports, with my advocacy for the arts and politics, is I like to talk about like regionalism, right? Mm-hmm. So talk to me about kind of like that aspect of how you got into art and like the influences from the southern rap or the Midwest. Talk to me about a little bit about that.
So I got started off. Like the music that my parents would listen to, my mom specifically, would be super eclectic. She, CD warehouse back in the day, whenever you get like CDs for a penny, which is obviously, as most people know now, it's not how that actually worked. We would be stacked up with different CDs from like, oh, here's Salt and Peppa, and here's Bare Naked Ladies, here's Casey and the Sunshine Band. Okay. Like everything would just be coming in at Matchbox 20. Okay. So my exposure was very sporadic, but things like classic rock were very big. And being a drummer, it was really, a lot of stuff was easier to learn back in those times, I remember playing like Smoke on the Water, just being like, oh, I could jam this. And that was, so those kind of influences were where like my rhythmic side of things really came into play. I knew that I loved 70s, I loved funk, I loved disco, I loved how it was incorporated with things like Salt and Peppa, different samples that hip hop artists would use. And then as far as like classic rock goes, whenever you have some of the crossovers, like when Run DMC and Aerosmith that walk this way, oh man, dropping in that beat underneath it and the scratching, it's another way again of like different cultures being incorporated. I love that. I love the crossovers of like when Jay-Z and Linkin Park had their 6-song album remix. Whew.
And that's a great point of exactly what I'm talking about, because like I'm from the South, right? And so much of that culture is a blend of we're almost they say like there's this term like triracial, right? Like in Tennessee, right? So you have like the African American influences, you have the European influences, you have the Native American influences. All these things kind of come together in these regions, and then in certain parts, like more in the Southwest, you have that kind of that Tejano, Hispanic style of music, So I love that when even like the banjo is actually an African instrument. A lot of people don't know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
that is a fun fact.
Africa, so pretty cool. Yeah, you can take that home.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll use that around the water cooler today.
Exactly. So, all right, that gets me into my second in our little James Lipton style question, trademark. And
of course,
we'll see how far we get. Like I said, so what do you feel is the state of the arts in the modern day? And I'm going to give you two categories.
Okay.
So, in other words, like people when they get older, they complain arts aren't what the same as they were or whatever, but I think people like you who are really into music, you can probably still find awesome stuff that's being recorded today that you still love and stuff like that. So but we're gonna do it two categories.
Okay.
First we're gonna go movies.
Ooh, the state of the art of movies. I think it's shaky right now in a transition period. I think that with the streaming services, with a lot of the online releases that 2020 kind of forced, I'm curious to see where we go from here. Is it a situation where the advertisement's easier, the budgets get bigger for the movies, and does that necessarily mean they're better movies? I mean, sometimes an overinflated budget, as we've seen in the past, can ruin a movie.
Yeah.
Like some of the greatest films of all time had very minuscule budgets that they were working on, just leftover scraps and shavings, but the passion was there. So my biggest curiosity as we're in 2021 now is what is going to be the state of movie theaters, what is that repercussion going to be on the movie industry itself?
Yeah, that's going to be a big deal, like with AMC and all that, they're having trouble. Yeah. So it's interesting to see. I think they're down but not out though, because there is a lot of people that are advocating for, hey, we miss the movie theater environment. There's a history to that. Is this going to be a Blockbuster style situation, or is it going to be a Netflix style situation that adapts but still has kind of its core ideas behind it? Right. Yeah, exactly. So as I do this podcast, I'm going to really try to lean on the answers of my guests, because what I'll find is if I start saying things, then I'll just say the same thing over and over, kind of like in the Joe Rogan podcast where he repeats himself a million times, you know. So, but I'll enter in just a little bit here. You know, I thought that like there was a period like in the mid 2000s, which was like almost like the golden age of cinema. Not really like I don't know that it was
always
like
debatable when you're talking decades.
Yeah. I don't know that it was like 1939 when you had Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz and all these, you know, come out in the same year. But there was something really cool going on where like all different kinds of movies were happening, you know, and there were just, you know, almost every year you had some amazing films and comedy, this and that. So, but I don't know, you see there was so much focus put on like the Marvel for a lot of years, and it's like it went to these giant blockbusters that were making billions of dollars, but then, you know, some of these art films that, you know, are the ones that are actually iconic, you know, and can win an Oscar or whatever, you know. And
where's the originality? Show me some original plot line, something that's well thought out. The remake era that we're in right now is, you know, it's always a dangerous double-edged sword that you're walking. If you're trying to remake something that's a classic, and a lot of them are doing it with, you know, they're trying to catch the cash cow of our current generation, and like we've got some money now and more desire to go out and see the movies. So here's The Lion King, and here's all the things that you grew up on. It's like you better come hitting hard. Aladdin's one of my favorite movies of all time. I still haven't seen the new one because I'm nervous, man. I'm scared. I don't want to be in a remake world.
Yeah, I see both sides of that. You know, generally I'm a fan of like just seeing these iconic things on the screen, right? And so like, and Will Smith does a pretty cool genie. Like there's this one part in Prince Ali where it like breaks down. It's pretty sick, man.
And I will watch it. I'm not gonna be a hater.
Yeah. Well, and then like, you know, so I'm like obsessed with lions, and so seeing The Lion King, like, you know, in real, you know, so there but I get the other side of it, and I get, okay, so you guys released on the Upside about this whole thing that they're remaking The Wizard of Oz, you know, and so that's my all-time favorite film, right?
Oh, nice.
And so and I'm like crazy, like maybe I'll take you upstairs to show you my Oz collection
for sure.
So anyway, but basically there's a lot of people in the Oz community that are like, I don't know, that you have different things, but you have that trope where it's like, oh, why would you remake something? But I don't know, for something like that where there's been adaptation after adaptation, it's hard to say like, why can't we have the Wiz, or why can we have the Wiz, but why can't we have this or whatever, you know?
And like we talked about with the cross-culture exposure of music, like the same thing for movies. And I'm all for bringing a passion. I love it whenever theaters do like the classic and then the remake. Let people get exposed to both, see where the original came from, or watch the new one and then go back to the classic. You know, that's a fun way to get some kids exposed to some of the classics that we watch.
Every story, you know, if you go back, is in some way derivative on other stories for them, unless it's like Beowulf or like, you know, biblical stories or something. Not every story, but but a lot of stories they build on, whether it's an element, whether it's even something that they say, I'm not gonna do that, or I'm gonna do something different,
or an homage too, but some kind of originality. Like you were talking about the 2000s, like the Pixar boom was awesome. You know, and it was your Toy Stories and your Cars and things that like, where did it come from? Not sure, but it seemed to us, or at least to me growing up in that era, that it had always been there. Obviously it hadn't. People older than us understand that there was a difference before, but it became such a part of the culture so quickly. And I'm trying to think of the last movie that I would think like really had that kind of impact on its release.
I mean, it's hard. You could say like things that were just like giant, like In-Game or something like
for
that.
Box office numbers.
But as far as like a cultural,
and I guess you could see it with like Halloween costumes and stuff. Like that is definitely the massive trend. If you've been handing out candy any of the past couple of years, you have a lot of superheroes, and I love that. And I love that exposure where a lot of kids are getting into the comic books because of it, and checking into some of the classics as well. I will be the first one to say, honestly, I have seen some of the movies and very few sporadic ones in between, so I'm not like the best guy to go to as far as any honestly comic book movies, but I'm a fan from afar. I'm not like super into it, but
I don't really like them, especially the Marvel ones. I don't really, there's a lot of, I don't know, I was explaining this on your guys' show, you know, I like fantasy. I don't like when there's a lot of like comedic breaks. I don't know, if I want to go to a comedy, I'm going to go to a comedy, you know, like so you know, that's But I whatever.
So like Thor Ragnarok or whatever that one was definitely not for you.
Yeah, I didn't dig it, and bring back Natalie Portman. Anyway, so, all right, so we're going to transition now into that same question, music.
Oof, state of music is wild right now. The exposure on different platforms, the ability to do something like we're doing literally right here and maybe have a Grammy from it. Just some people sitting down. Yeah, I mean, just people sitting down in front of a microphone, putting beats together. The programs are so much cheaper. The equipment is so much cheaper. Does that mean the quality of music has gone down? It depends on perspective. There's a lot of things that are bumping right now. And there's a lot of things because of that ease of content that does get kind of brushed under the rug. There always has been, but I would be willing to bet that it's more so now, just because the amount of content that is available is not limited to a record shelf or a CD rack. There is now, every single website has the ability to host gigs and gigs and hundreds of thousands of gigs of music, which gives you access to millions upon millions of songs with new ones being released every day.
Yeah.
So I think the good thing about that is people who find their niche that they are really into and love get exposed to all of their genre once they really start diving into and finding these kind of things. But I think it's interesting now that radio stations, are not necessarily the primary source of music being listened to. They are going a lot more niche as well, even though that's what a lot of the playlist places, Spotify and different things, you can have I want just 70s radio. No, I want 70 to 73 funk and lo-fi that was double recorded and ripped off albums. Like you could find those.
Grindhouse.
Yeah, exactly. You can find that specific of a niche market going down in through genres. And also just the amount of quote-unquote genres. It seems like there's a new one of those every day too, between electronic music and whatever. But I think it's cool that the access to quote-unquote music making, whether you believe it or not, if people are just behind a synthesizer making every single melodic structure with the bass guitar and all that on a keyboard, or they're actually playing each individual instrument, the accessibility to record and then release your own music now is something that's powerful, and it's something that I think still the exposure availability is there for new artists. So you put yourself out enough, there's enough ears out listening for new stuff that even in the flood and onslaught of new content that's being released every single day, you can still find a way to rise to the top in kind of a capitalistic kind of way. You get the views, you get the watches, and obviously there's big money at play with labels and stuff like that that's always been there. So those challenges I think are still very much similar, even if not the same. Like it's not record labels anymore, but as far as like your Spotify views and stuff, are you gonna spend the money on the promotion and the ads to get people to click through to that? Now it's more put out the content, let people consume the content. Personality has become a huge part of music as well. There's a lot of
showmanship,
100%, and the exposure to the backside of music life now. So many bloggers and vloggers, and you have access to Facebook lives and everything that you can stream live and Twitch and whatever. You can do full recording sessions now on there. So people having the access to the person as well as the music, I think is a huge double-edged sword. I know that I used that saying already, but some of the most classic artists of all time would have been very interesting if their back, like the Beatles even, if you saw all of their back behind the scenes stories, it would have been an interesting outlook, I think.
Beach Boys,
for Brian sure. Oh man, just and would it lose some of the magic or would it add to it?
Right.
I think eventually it's a diminishing return as far as eventually something may happen to lose that magic. But that was a huge rant.
No, I love it, man. And I love, that's what my goal in this podcast is to get my guests to talk the most, So what I was thinking this the other day, this is kind of cool. Because if you study like what music is, just like what these tones are like entering into our cerebellum or whatever, it's just like sort of repeating tones, that our brain kind of puts together, and it's sort of pleasing, but there's something to really be said about instruments. We talked about this already, because those are, it's not just a computer putting the right tones together, although that's cool, can be cool music too,
100%.
But there's something about that traditional wail of a steel guitar, whatever, that is really I think that just like when there's nothing that can replace a song you've already heard. Like you hear I've always felt this. You hear a new song and it's exciting and it's like, yeah, this is cool. But if there's something that you've known, it's a classic rock song, "Sweet Child of Mine,"
that comfort song comes on and you're just jamming.
Yeah, there's just something really classic about that. Have you ever gotten into musical theater at all?
Not personally, no. Like I'm a fan of going and watching, but again, I've done some like more technical side of things, like ransom house in front of house and lighting, that kind of stuff. Okay. But no, not for me.
I love that's a genre that I'm kind of interested in some ways because I love songs that tell stories. That's what country music is a lot about.
And that's what a lot of old rap is for me. I mean, Biggie had some songs, but Big L, old East Coast rapper, rest in peace again, he would tell a story. He could go 4-8 minutes and you were watching a story in your mind by listening to it on an album. Yeah. So 100%.
So you mentioned this isn't interesting. You mentioned all the genres. There's like countless genres now. But I have this little theory too that in some ways there's just one genre left or kind of two. Okay. So if you go to like a city, right, and you turn and you're flipping through Seek, right, you're gonna get, now if you're in like a bigger, like maybe in Atlanta or Chicago or something like that, you're gonna have a station that's specifically like rap, right? But generally, like let's just say you're going through here, you're gonna have your popular music channels and then you're gonna have your country channels, and it's almost like country is like the last genre in a sense that's like unique from all the rest, like, you know what I mean? Like ponder on that for a second.
Yeah, because I mean I guess like for a lot of the, like you said, popular music, the hits of 80s, 90s, and today, and all that kind of stuff, you will hear a lot of different quote-unquote subgenres, but you won't hear country. Yeah. And then, for country music, there is still, there's some crossover stuff that gets played that's popular, but there is some country songs that you will hear on a country station that you are not going to hear anywhere else.
And rock is so, like, rock nowadays is so different than, we don't have these hair bands. Right. We don't have, I mean, you do, because they're still around. They're all kicking,
like tribute kind of.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. That's cool, man.
But sorry, you were talking musical theater. Did I distract you from that?
Okay. That was good. I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that real quick. So then finally about the state of the arts. And here's, there's a third aspect to this. And we don't have to get too in depth with it, but and so maybe instead of saying like the state of this, maybe what you would desire to see for the future of this is the state of the arts in Branson.
State of the arts in Branson. So,
or what?
Well, oh no,
what you would like it to be, what your dream is.
I'm gonna get real for a second on my opinion. So, and this is no offense to anyone in any way. This is just a view that I have. I think that there is an homage and tribute and reference constantly made to the 90s and to the massive show boom. Yeah. And I think oftentimes it is not discussed what happened with so many shows being in Branson, with the quality of shows and with the amount of open seats that were just being sold then, secondhand, timeshare sales, that kind of pitch, like that whole ticket exchange. We can get onto that topic anytime you want. Oh, man. So I think that I love that Branson is still considered a live entertainment capital, right? I want to see us move forward supporting the shows that put the time and quality in. And I'm not talking about all money. You don't have to have all the newest production and all of that. Are you actually putting in the effort to put forth the best show for your audience that is coming and paying money to sit in your seats? And that's, you know what? Here we go. As far as the ticket exchange and all of that, I think that hurts a lot of things because it's just readily available tickets and less so people going specifically to a show because this is what I want to see. This is my kind of music. This is my favorite entertainer, whatever. I think that needs to drive the market more in Branson going forward.
Yeah. Well, and this is important because this is really kind of the crux of what the Song of Hope is all about, and, it's interesting because when you talk about like the resellers, sometimes the ones that they put forward aren't the ones that are the best quality like you're talking about,
Because profit. And hey, I'm all for capitalism, but I'm also for the market being demand. And I think that it crosses over that line when it's less free market of people's choice of show and more what is the profit margin or what do we have extra tickets of? Hey, we got to fill these seats.
Yeah, exactly right. And So I've been in the last 2.5 years. I've been to like 97 shows. I'm
Awesome.
coming up on 100. You know,
Love it.
And there's literally there was like one that I didn't care about.
Yep.
That was it, man. And I, you know,
And we have made it a long way, by the way. I'm still talking
Yeah.
like back when it was, hey, come to Branson. We have 198 shows or whatever
Absolutely,
it was.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah. So I get excited about what we have. What I would like to see is like we were talking about, the talent, the cool shows, the ones that do put in the effort, for those to be spotlighted more, highlighted more, you know, because there are places like, so I was on a big road trip, and there's Abraham Lincoln's birthplace, right? And next to Abraham Lincoln's birthplace in Hodgenville, Kentucky or whatever, there's the Abraham Lincoln Hoedown, like a little,
Right.
you know, so there are like Branson style shows like all over the country, but there's only really one place where they're all
Right.
collected in this, you know, and you can just open one, and that's the, you know, so I think that's the unique, and I wanted to kind of, you know, bring this up because there's a lot of talk about going younger when we're trying to bring in tourists to Branson, and I'm for that. I'm not for forsaking, you know,
sure.
the older generation, which is the baby boomer generation is coming, and they're one of the artists in the history of the world, you know. But insofar as we do go younger, I'm so interested in going younger through our music, you know.
Yeah.
So as opposed to maybe trying to do it with the rides or this or
Yeah.
that, do it through the music, you know. So
And I think there may be a way to kind of combine a little bit of other elements that we have here in the area. One thing that I think would be awesome for Branson, and this is not something that I have well thought through and all of that, but we have such beautiful natural tourism as well as such talented artists. And there are so many other places around the country that have different types of festivals. And we have some here as
Yeah.
well, but it's never been like a really big focus.
Yeah.
Can we get some of these beautiful areas to be a serene environment for people to come enjoy fantastic music also?
pretty awesome, man.
And, you know, with a lot of the festivals, if it's a 3-day kind of a thing, there can be staggered shows as far as morning time and afternoon. You can play some of the older music, older crowd. You can bring in younger crowds in the evening and nighttime. I think it would be fun to see more of that kind of style of show to highlight some of the natural beauty and the environmental tourism that a lot of people are coming for.
Yeah.
But also give exposures to a lot of these great musicians, a lot of the great shows. And I want to be very clear what we talked about earlier as far as highlighting and focusing on the shows that are putting in the work and the effort. That's not to say that, you know, it's not these big names bring X amount of people to town. This is
Right.
who we should throw all our money behind. Because I want to see new shows and new faces and new talent develop and emerge along with our long-standing, you know,
Yeah.
namesakes in Branson. But the effort being more free market in the sense of, hey, I went and saw X show and you need to go see it. It was
Yeah.
fantastic. The performers, everybody was in it. I felt like whenever I left, I was 100% happier than I was whenever I showed up. That's the kind of thing that I would love to see driving the show's success in this town, more so than I think what might have happened allegedly during the first boom.
Exactly, man. And I love that. And, you know, I like what you said about the different kind of categories, you know, because through my Song of Hope efforts, when it first started, people thought, well, is he someone who just advocates for the small shows or something like that, or the ones that are struggling? Because naturally, you know, when you say Song of Hope, that
Right.
you say that there's a place where you need to be hopeful for,
Right.
right? So you're in kind of on your back foot. Now, I don't like the idea of, you know, our shows are dying. That's not the premise of the Song of Hope.
But some shows need to fail. And I'm not
Sure.
saying that for your Song of Hope. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, Russ Willoughby personally, there are some shows that, again, like the market saying there's less and less crowd can be.
And that is the free market aspect of it, right? So a lot of people, you know, like on the national economic level, we privatize the gains and socialize the losses. You know, we bail out the banks when they, you know, so
Right.
it's like, so, you know, on a local level, when you have these shows, it's like, hey, if these people can slog along and make it, maybe they have another job, it's like, power to them,
Absolutely.
you know, that kind of thing.
And I'm not saying pack it up and quit. I'm saying maybe try to adapt, and that's not easy now, especially after 2020 happened. There's not a lot of extra capital, not a lot of extra money, and it's unfortunate that it happened right before what is starting to feel like the start of another boom, because, man, It is
Town's
now.
packed right
It
now,
is
bro.
March 2021, and town has been packed and continues to be packed. And this is just starting spring break.
Yeah.
It's looking, and the CVB. There's so many different places that are putting in numbers. We had the Forbes report calling us like number 4 on the safest places to visit, even during a pandemic. So it is kind of unfortunate to see many of the shows and places have to shut down right before a potential boom. It is going to be kind of. I could see a continuance though of like life. You got to adapt, and for us to see the vision of the future of Branson, and maybe if we can get more people to come together on what that may be with give and take. It's hard when you have so many different visions and so many different great outlets for Branson. Where are we all going to come together and say this is what we should focus on moving forward?
Yeah. But I appreciate your perspective. It's positive, and it's, like I said, I appreciate it because this is what we're going to do on this podcast. We're going to get everybody in, and I have a place where I advocate from, but you need to hear people's positions, and then you can kind of work and move together, and then you can
100%.
advocate and you say, okay, where is this person at? Where is their starting point? Quite frankly, maybe what have they heard for 20 years that might be true in some cases and not true in others, and how can we all sort of move together with one vision? So I'm excited about that. Yeah, man. All right. So number 3. So we've moved through our questions here. Instead of saying, movie or whatever, song, okay, book, do you have a favorite story?
Oh, wow. A favorite story.
And it could be in a book form or movie form, but like with me, when I say The Wizard of Oz, that would include the movie and the book, right? So.
So I have a lot of things rolling through my head right now. I have a lot of songs that are rolling through my head.
You could even give me 3. Or 2, answer however you want.
I'm going to throw it back to Big L. I'm sorry about the rapper. That's just one of the greatest storytellers. It's not a great story, but the way that it is portrayed, he has a song called The Heist, and it's pretty fascinating. Just his wordplay, storytelling. As far as what the first boom popped into my head is more emotional memory. There is a book, a story from a book that my mom reads every Christmas Eve.
Nice.
It's called Evan A. Mouse, and it's a story about when they were writing the night before Christmas. There was a sloppy penmanship, and instead of not even a mouse, it was actually a real mouse named Evan A. Mouse, and he was a house mouse. Nice. So that story has a very special place to me. So that's one that kind of pops up. But man, there are so many great songs, so many great movies that just have those wow, that was really fascinating story. And even there's a lot of great veteran stories that I've gotten to hear over the years. Yeah. I got the very fortunate in the Branson area to be exposed to a lot of great veterans with the programs that go on here. Whenever I was working at the IMAX for their Veterans Week celebration, I got to meet a gentleman named Harvey Young. He was in the Ghost Army. Hearing his stories about the secrets that they had to keep, the tours, the missions that they were doing, just the big bluff of the Ghost Army, these inflatable tanks and these sound systems literally bluffing off entire brigades as they were coming in. It was fascinating to hear right from the mouth. So that would be tough for me to just really hammer home my favorite overall.
Well, that's a good answer though, but you made me think of something. So I've always been a real big history guy, but the Civil War was something that other people were more passionate about than I was, so, but I went to the Wilson's Creek battlefield up here in Springfield. Absolutely. And what was cool to me about it was all right, so there's this hill over here, and this is where this battery was, and then there's this cliff over here, and it was you almost got to see it like a military, strategic military mine. The orcs are coming down this way, and so it's interesting how the land became part of the story, and where you were at.
And we're rich with that around here.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. No, I like that. Do you have a historical figure that you feel connected to? And it could be the opposite, right? So this person represented something evil that you feel that you represent the opposite of, or anything like that, or you feel connected to, you have a kinship to.
That is going to be tough. Well, a few come to mind.
Okay.
But I want to really think about this.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of like, I have the saying that I use a lot on the air is like, you do you, let them do them.
Yeah.
There's always you do you and I'll do me. But the overall, like, I'm rambling here as I'm thinking, like my overall feeling has been just like, be yourself in whatever way that you can be.
Yeah.
So even though this person might not necessarily represent me or a lot of my views,
Yeah.
Hunter S. Thompson
Okay.
had his very unique and specific way of doing all kinds of, with his quote unquote gonzo journalism, like being able to be in the same room as so many massive political figures and being a part of a political movement in a time of craziness and Nixon, like, but then also be able to go across the country and report on a motorcycle race or like different sporting events. Until his dying day, just a very, even though he's insane. I mean, I'm not here to glorify anything that the man did or say that I'm like him in those ways. But there's something about his trueness to himself that I've always been a fan of.
Yeah, and he had an effect on like people that he got to know. Yeah. Like people that he got to know were like just mesmerized with his character and like still, you know.
The stories of him later in his years where he would just be on the phone for hours rambling about something, but he loved the connection of being on the phone, even though he was kind of a recluse on his land. You know, just I don't know. He's always been a very fascinating charter.
That's a good answer. To me. Yeah. No, and that's perfect. It can be somebody who's just eclectic and you just think is interesting. Yeah. You've learned from, maybe you can learn from people's mistakes.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Frank Sinatra popped up just because I love him and I love that era, and I've often wondered what it would have been like to be alive there. But no, I think I'm just gonna I'm gonna stick with Hunter S.
Very
Thompson.
cool. So there's a similar. So I said, do you have a historical figure that you feel connected to? Do you have a country? Like a culture, a country that you feel connected to?
I've always wanted to go to the motherland, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, all that whole area.
Have you done your whole ancestry and everything?
I am white. I am like, the more that people put the DNA tests in, you know, it gets more accurate.
Yeah.
I get whiter. Like they just keep narrowing it down to like European, Irish, Wales, Scotland stuff, and it gets tighter and tighter. But yeah, that is on my bucket list, and I will definitely be doing an Ireland and Scotland trip.
Very cool, man. So you're talking about ancestry as they refine it, and so I came up where it was they would just do the mixed British ancestry, you know, of the all Great Britain.
General.
But now they're doing it where it's more specific Ireland and Scotland and this. And I've always had an affinity for Scotland. And so, you know, but I'm like 49% Scottish. So, yeah.
Oh, I'm like 90-something%. I like Northern Ireland, Wales. I don't even remember now. I'll have to pull that up. But
that's awesome, man. Yeah. So very cool. Okay. So we're going to play a fun game.
Awesome.
I picked 7 trinities, basically, of things, and I want you to tell me. You got to pick one of these. It's kind of like what you guys did with me the other day on the
Like a this or that kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's 3.
Okay. This or that or this.
Yeah, exactly. And just pick one of them. Okay, you don't have to rank them. Okay. Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Bob Marley.
Oh, dude, come on. Okay, I'm going to rank them. So Marvin Gaye, love his music for sure. Got some classics. I'm going to put him 3rd on my personal list.
Okay.
All right, and this is not a reference of anything that he does musically. It is very hard, very, very hard for me to do this. I can't believe I'm going to. I got to put Bob Marley 2nd on my personal list. Just because Stevie Wonder, man, got the bangers. He's right up my alley. I'm a wedding DJ too, so I would be lost without many Stevie Wonder songs. Yeah, he's just got that, and he's got quite the eclectic, you know, style too.
Yeah, okay.
Many different styles.
I like that. All right, Eminem, Tupac, Wu-Tang. These are gonna be hard. I love it.
3 Wu-Tang, but again, no disrespect to the clan. They ain't nothing to mess with. 2, God, rest in peace to Tupac. Even though you are definitely a movement and a force in music, just where I was in my timeline, Eminem for me has got to be number 1.
Yeah. You know, my fiance is
man.
Yeah, my fiance, she's a young African American, and she doesn't get the Eminem thing. You know,
Oh, I totally understand that.
Yeah, it's funny, but I always show her these Billboard charts, like he's number 3 all time.
And
whatever,
it would have been even harder if you would have put Biggie in.
Oh yeah,
because man, Biggie and Eminem. Because Tupac had the lyrics and he could speak to the people, but me being the rhythmic guy that I was, I'm a huge fan of the flow and just Biggie's kind of swagger and funk that he had and the presence on the mic. But both of them, I mean, not taken away from either. Love them both.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So I know that you've been becoming influenced a little bit by Josh Clark.
Oh,
You've
man.
been learning some history of
yes, boy.
of kind of the country music.
Yes,
but
sir.
I got 3 here that are well known enough that I bet you could pick, okay? They're kind of traditional, right? Mm-hmm. All right. Willie Nelson, Hank Williams Sr., Patsy Cline.
Oh, so see, we talked earlier about me drumming for Patsy Cline.
Yeah.
So I do have a little soft spot in my heart for Patsy. Obviously, Josh Clark has got me hammered down on Hank Sr.,
Yes.
Hank Jr. even more so. I'm going to have to go with my boy Willie, though. Yeah. Yes, sir.
That'd be my pick.
There's just something about, again, a guy who kind of just picked his way in life and stayed real true. Not that the other ones didn't, for sure, but he just had that, this is me, take it or leave it.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Would you rather go to Bonnaroo, Coachella, or Burning Man?
Wow. All great.
You've been to any of them?
To none of them,
okay, I've
man,
been to Bonnaroo.
Unfortunately. And they are also on my bucket list for sure. I think I would like to go to Coachella for the audacity that some people have to be so like ostentatious in the middle of a desert. I think that's hilarious. Burning Man, I think. Can you be a hipster on something you've never even been to? Like, I think that it was one of those things that had a really cool origin that has kind of, as many of these have, that has kind of been taken away. So probably number 1 on my list in order, I would go to Bonnaroo and then work my way through the others.
Very cool, man. So I saw the Beach Boys, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Alice Cooper was there. It was really cool when I went.
Love it.
Yeah, man. Okay, so since you're getting into radio personality yourself, and my goal for this is to like create 7 individual ones for everybody that I interview.
Nice.
You know, so I just went through and kind of, but okay, so some kind of radio podcast personality interview style people. Okay,
for sure.
And I like to pick from different, throw in a third one that's like
left fielder as we call them.
All right. Joe Rogan,
Okay.
Howard Stern,
Okay.
Larry King.
Oh, wow. All right. So rest in peace, Larry King.
Yeah.
Obviously had a lot to do with media. His interview style got to the bottom of a lot of things. It was a bit dry for me.
Really? Yeah.
Howard Stern, you want to talk about knocking down doors in the radio business. And again, you guys might have caught on to a trend that I like the people who stay true to themselves. Yeah. Love him or hate him, he stuck to it, and it worked out well for him. So Howard Stern is for sure up there. There's something about Joe Rogan's, I think it's just maybe the format, being able to be more long form. But even though Larry King had some long form abilities, you got commercial breaks and he's on public, network television, you got producers in the way. There's something about the rawness. Howard Stern and Joe Rogan would be a real close neck and neck to me, but Joe Rogan also he's not afraid to say that he's wrong, which I love in anybody in media. And I try to be that person as much as possible. If I get something wrong, call me out. I would love to learn something new. And I think that it should be an easier thing to admit when somebody's wrong, no matter what they did, and be able to come back from that, depending, obviously. But he always also likes to, try to play devil's advocate a little bit. He's not super firm on his beliefs when he's interviewing, even though he has his stances. He lets the other person explain their ways. So I'll go with Rogan on that one.
Okay, very cool. I used to, when Larry King had his hour on CNN, he used to have, there would be nights where his guest was fascinating, and he would have it for the whole hour. So it's funny. I'm a little younger, but I used to like watching.
Hey, totally, man.
Yeah, he'd have some good interviews.
That background is so calming.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. All right, so this one's funny. Chris Rock, Steve Martin, Robin Williams.
Oh, wow. Wow. All great. And I'm a huge comedy buff, too. Yeah. Huge comedy buff, which is also where Joe Rogan gets a slight,
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's tough, man. 3 different, genres and style of comedy. Steve Martin's autobiography. Can't remember the name of it right now. I got it sent to me when I was in the Navy.
Isn't it like Born Standing Up?
Born Standing Up, thank you. Yeah. Yes, fantastic. Hearing his story about like, hey, I'm going to make it. Yeah. And he did. Yeah. He made it happen. He worked really hard. And I mean, practically homeless for a while whenever he decided to move to California. The way that he incorporates other things that he loves and finds funny in his music, like that. Yeah, he is high up there for me. Yeah, exactly. Oh man, Chris Rock though. Again, you have somebody who's kind of tearing down some doors in some controversial topics. Robin Williams, his classic stand-up will always be classic. Mm-hmm. His golf bit is always going to be one of the best all-time well thought out bits of comedy. He is incomparable when it comes to his available like content. He just spews out comedy, boom, 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 boom. Once you're done laughing at the first punchline, you've missed two of them while you were laughing. So that is tough, man. Chris Rock, dang it. Yeah. Oh, that's tough though. That is really hard.
Very good. Okay, so I stepped on your you had a great comment the other day on the Upside when we were on there, and I totally stepped on your comment, and I didn't hear it until I went back, but I definitely would have keyed on it had I heard it. So I mentioned my favorite show of all time growing up, Boy Meets World, and you said, man. And so Josh said, I liked it better when it was called The Wonder Years, you know, with Fred Savage as opposed to Ben Savage, right? But then you said a great line. It should be, you know, you should have it in quotation and say, the Wonder Years didn't have Topanga, right? I mean, come on, man.
Step up. That's a hill I'll die on. Let's go.
Okay. Well, and this is, I've asked you a couple questions that have actually referred back to things you said earlier in the podcast, but okay, so we'll do some TV love interest is the final three. Okay?
Oh, no.
Topanga, Daisy Duke, or, you know, again, left field, Minnie Mouse, you know.
Oh, going with the animated. All right. Again, the timeline of life. Yes. You know, growing up.
Brother, I feel you.
I had some weird celebrity crushes when I was... Summer Sanders, you remember when she had that show on Nickelodeon? What would you do?
I don't even remember. She was the old swimmer, right?
Yeah. So that was one. I was big into scary movies, so Neve Campbell, for a weird reason, from Scream. I don't know why. Don't judge me out there. I feel it right now. People aren't even listening live, and I feel it. But again, just that time in life and seeing all of the episodes. I'm going to have to give it to Topanga, Boy Meets World.
I'd have to give it to that one, too.
Yep.
Okay, and I think we're going to do it, man. We are going to make it through.
Let's hammer it out.
To the final question. It is... You know, we talked about the whole Inside the Actor Studio, made the joke, what's your favorite curse word?
Right.
You know, but, so I didn't go that direction. What I did do is I kind of put a derivation on one of the final questions that he asked, okay? And what I want in this podcast and what I want in this question is not like a religious discussion, but just your heart and what you desire and kind of what you find fascinating about the world, what you find beauty in the world. So, if you went home and had a dream tonight, and in the dream you entered into the gates of heaven, what do you think you would see?
Wow. I love that. That is deep, man. We could go an hour on this topic easily, by the way. What do I think I would see? Well, here's where my soul is.
Okay.
All right. I hope this doesn't turn controversial, but
go ahead.
So, Christian upbringing, like Awana Club, all of that. So the Bible's very important to me. For me personally, I use a lot of the stories of the Bible to be the best example of a literal representation of something that our minds cannot comprehend.
Yeah.
Okay. So like whatever it is that's on that other side, I don't think our imagination could even begin. So even when, you know, it's like Jesus on the white horse, I think that's like at the time an example of something that is magnificent and fascinating and unbelievable and majestic.
Yeah.
So one thing that I've always been curious about, I think that whenever we're over there, there is no lying, there's nothing but truth. I think love is the overall factor, and I wonder if they talk about, you know, the jewels in the crown and that kind of stuff. I wonder if there is a way to see or know immediately, however it works, like what a person's meter is as far as just their goodness or their level of love. If that's what
like
the jewels,
aura, yeah,
like a color scheme or something, you know, or again, something that we haven't even thought of and don't even know about in this dimension and world, that whenever we do die, which I do believe, I would be shocked if there's nothing, you know, and if there is, all right, my bad, but I would just be shocked that all of this is so coincidental. And so, and if there is a big bang, you know, who put it there? Like where did all of this, there's an origination point somewhere and it's something unfathomable, or maybe there's not. Everything is so eternal that our minds are so small to even try to comprehend a sliver of it. So I guess my idea is this place of truth and honesty and love overall, understanding. I don't think there are struggles necessarily. Maybe there are. I mean, maybe it's still a continuation and there are going to be struggles, but that maybe there's more understanding of everybody's intent. I think that's one thing that I would love to have a piece of heaven here on earth more, is just knowing intent and understanding that people are people. We make mistakes. I make mistakes. My intent, though, I want to always be good, and I want other people to want to be good to other people. So hopefully that's what heaven's like.
Yeah. No, I like that, man. And you keyed on something there, because it's like, so often in this modern culture where everyone wants to get each other in trouble and things like that, it's like you don't want to hear what the person is saying. What people do a lot of times is they say, well, this is what you mean. You know, I interpret it, you what you mean, even if, and then now it's becoming, even if you don't even know that you mean, you subconsciously
what you
mean
said
that,
was,
you know? Yeah, exactly. But no, I love that, man, because that really wraps us up here, because what I wanted to get through in this podcast, I think it came through, is that not only your story, but your personality, and just, if I would give you a question like this, what would come through? And so you answered that with seeing the different auras and the different personalities and the different qualities of people. So I think that's a great quality that you have, that in expressing your personality, you want to see the personalities and the great qualities in others. So,
I appreciate that,
man.
I think the soul has always been big in many religions, like all across the board, and especially with Christianity as well. Like, that is our everlasting soul and everlasting life. So if that everlasting means forever and ever beyond our wildest comprehensions, like, what does that entail from what we're taking here to there? And I appreciate you asking me that. I love thinking about that kind of stuff.
Bro. Well, this was a blast, dude.
I
had a great time, and like I said, you're the inaugural guest.
It's an honor, and I cannot wait to watch this thing just grow and expand. And same with you personally and everything that you're doing. Keep being a force in this community, man. We need some more good in here.
Thanks, bro. Russell, I appreciate it, man.
Marshall, great time with you today.
Right, we're signing off.